Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, referees, linesmen, and ball boys, one and all. Put your whistles away and hang up your boots. Pour yourselves a stiff Gatorade, neat or on the rocks, please yourself, but relax. The pressure is off you and squarely on us here right now because it's time for a round of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. And welcome to the microphone, clad in matching terry-toweling headband and wristbands. It's our very own Matthew Dickerson. How's your week been, Matt?
Well, I'm excited, James. I'm excited because I can confirm officially, at this stage at least, I'm still smarter than AI.
Oh, all right. It's official then.
I've had a victory.
It's been measured.
Well, and it wasn't a victory that I wanted because I have mentioned to you that I've been using AI to just do a little bit of programming for me because it just makes it a bit quicker and easier. Here's what I want to do. I know the functions that you can use. Write this bit of code. And so I've been cheating, if you like. Code saves time.
It's allowed now.
That's right. I'm sorry. I'm guilty. And I had an experience where I was dealing with a fairly large data set and it had a bunch of dates in this data set. And so I was dealing with this and I was running some various queries that I was writing, some SQL queries on it, and I'd get a random error that would come up. So, of course, what you do when you get an error, well, I just gave it back to AI and said, you've got an error in this code and can you tell me what it is, please?
Can you stop stuffing up?
That's right. Can you get it right? So I did that and it gave me some other solutions, and I that's not right. No, can you try it again? Because sometimes that works when you think that doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
Have another go, and then it will say, sorry about that.
My bad.
Here's the right answer. Why didn't you do that the first time around? And it couldn't solve the problem. I thought, I'm going to have to actually dive into this code and have a look.
AI made you work.
And I found the problem. It's a first world problem. I get it. I can hear the contempt in your voice. And I found the problem was the 29th of February. So AI was a bit confused because the 29th of February is not a valid date. But of course it is once every 4 years.
That's right.
But it didn't allow for that in its
didn't
code.
Understand the 29th of February.
So in this data set, it had some dates. There was a bunch of transactions. It had some transactions that had occurred on the 29th of February, 2000.
So if I asked AI to make my sister a birthday card, there's a 29th of February girl.
She 29th of February birthday. Oh wow.
She'd be cardless.
Cardless. It would say, sorry your sister does not exist. And I do wonder, I thought about it, it's a bit like the Y2K problem. I do wonder whether or not some systems just can't handle that in general. So for many people out there that were born on the 29th of February, I wonder whether they just put their date in various government forms or in literature as the 28th of February. Because if it says, when's your birthday this year, and it's not a leap year, you go 29th of February 2025, that's not my birthday this year. So when is my birthday this year? I don't really have an official birthday. So I do wonder whether some government forms make you just say, sorry, 29th of February. And that's maybe the way AI was thinking in this code. It was just don't have that date existing because that's too complicated. It's simpler if we just end every month in February, no matter what the year, on the 28th of February. So I found the problem. I had to overwrite the code that AI had written for me. I had to fix the code it had written for me to allow for the exceptions for
So at any stage did AI actually concede defeat and say, Matt, can you help me?
Well, this is the thing. I then had a bit of a philosophical problem. I thought, do I tell AI that it's stuffed up here and then AI becomes smarter and there's one less thing that I've got over it? Or do I just go, I'm keeping that one to myself so I can just keep that little... Anyway, I did the thing that I think was better for the greater good and I said to AI, I've discovered the problem. Here's what I've written to fix the problem and the problem was a leap year, blah, blah. Explained it and AI said, thank you.
Thank you.
Duly noted. I'll get it right next time. So for anyone else out there...
Just wondering if AI was actually going to get a bit smarmy, bit of attitude.
Yeah.
Oh, why don't you do it all yourself then?
That's right. If that was so easy, do the rest yourself. So it's fascinating, isn't it? Just the development of AI and what it's got to learn, the things it's got to counter. Any human, any adult, I suppose, most kids as well, would probably be aware of leap years, be vaguely aware. Of course, the year 2000 was an interesting one. As most people know, every 4 years you have a leap year. Mostly. We have a leap year every 4 years, except if the year is divisible by 100, except if the year is also divisible by 400. So in the year 2000, lots of semi-experts showed off their knowledge by saying that, yes, we have a leap year every 4 years, except if the year is divisible by 100, such as the years 1700, 1800, 1900, all of which were not leap years. But then the real experts chimed in to say that, yes, it is true that if the year is divisible by 100, it is not a leap year, but it must also be divisible by 400 to be a non-leap year. And since the year 2000 was divisible by 400, it was still a leap year. So it's one of those fascinating situations that being blind to the additional information was okay. If you just had in your mind that a leap year is every 4 years and had no knowledge of the 100-year and 400-year scenario, you just assumed 2000 was a leap year, just like 1996 and just like 2004, and you were right. So it's not just a simple every 4 years as well. There's more complication to it. So most people know that, most people are aware of that, but AI wasn't immediately aware of this problem.
Well, AI is very good when the instructions are very clear and there are no exceptions to the
so
rules.
It's my fault now, is it? Is that what you're saying?
Perhaps.
I didn't instruct it to take into account the 29th of February.
Well, we got a little bit of a story about that, sort of that deeper thinking later on for AI. But anyway, in today's episode, we're dropping a couple more ideas for early Christmas gifts. There's a toy robot. Of course, there's always a toy robot. And there's also a riskier option in the form of, an electric mop and vacuum combo. Just be careful who you line that one up for. Now, we'll check in on the good news about flying taxis coming to a taxi rank near you, and we'll see what AI is up to, for better or worse, as we so often do, as I've just suggested. But our first story is all about the wearables. How's your smartwatch going these days? Tracking your steps, your sleep, your heart rate, hydration perhaps? Or are you a smartwatch abstainer? Is a watch just not your sort of couture? Well, would you be into a smart ring then? They're smart, they're stylish, they're discreet, and it'll bring you one step closer to becoming the Green Lantern, Matt.
That sounds impressive. I just think smartwatches. So yesterday, James, smartwatch, get with the program. You need a smart ring.
Bring me my smart ring. That's got a ring to it? Anyway, sorry.
So quite impressive. There's a few out there, but Samsung has now released their Galaxy Ring, and there are some other ones out there that are...
Galaxy Ring, that does sound straight out of the comic books, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? Absolutely right. So some of the ones that have come out before them by various companies have been okay, but the Samsung Galaxy Ring seems to be pretty impressive in what it can do. Obviously designed to work with a Samsung phone, so you've got to have at least Android, but typically they'd like you to have a Samsung phone. And it can measure things like your heart rate, skin temperature, your movement tracking. So no longer when you're about to go for your 10-kilometre daily run, James, you have to put your smartwatch on or take your phone with you. Your ring will monitor that. And my kids tell me, if I go for a run or a bike ride and I tell them about it, they say, show us your stats. And if I say something silly like, I didn't record that bike ride, they say, well, it didn't happen. If you didn't record it and you can't prove it to me, didn't happen.
If the batteries go flat halfway through your run,
just stop.
Just stop and find some way to get someone to pick you up. Because
So with this ring on, you'll never have that problem with saying, I didn't record that run, because it just automatically knows what you're doing as you move around. It helps with sleep patterns, because one of the problems with a smartwatch is most of them get you through a day and then you need to charge it. Logically, some people say, let's charge it overnight. Some people charge it before they go to bed because they want to monitor their sleep. But for many people, charging overnight makes sense. But then they're not having their sleep patterns monitored.
That's right.
Did you really sleep? If it's not monitored, did you sleep? So these rings will monitor sleep patterns, how much time you've slept, what your heart rate and your heart rate variability was as you slept, and basically you'll get an energy score. I don't know what the units are of the energy score. There's a number.
How many swimming pools? Or no,
that's right, something. There's got to be some non-SI unit there.
I'm just wondering, if you've got a smart ring and a smartwatch, is there a chance that they might conflict? And in a case of conflict, what happens? Does your wrist explode? Or
Well, I want to know who wins. So your watch says you did a 5-kilometre run and your ring says, no, it was 4.8 kilometres. Okay, who wins?
Yeah, and what was your heart rate?
Yeah, that's right. What's your heart rate? How accurate is your finger measurement compared to your wrist measurement for heart rate?
There's a world of hurt here.
Samsung, maybe from a sales perspective, say, this isn't designed to replace a smartwatch, it's to complement your smartwatch. So Samsung, for some strange reason, would like you to have a phone and a watch and a ring, because that means more sales. But I get it as well. There's some things this won't do. At this stage, and it's only at this stage, you can't listen to your music. It's got a fair bit of memory, for a ring. We're talking about something pretty small here.
Yeah.
It's got 8 megabytes of memory, which isn't much compared to a smartwatch in terms of how many songs you might hold on there. It's enough for 6 days of activity, which is not too bad. Now, it's not designed to store 6 days and then download. It would be linking it back to your phone on a hour basis, a daily basis. So you're not designed to go 6 days without linking it up, but it does store enough. But 8 megs might store you 1 or 2 songs, so probably not enough for a good playlist. It might get a bit repetitive on there, but that's early days. The thing that I am most impressed about is the battery life. 7 days battery life. Now, the first thing I think is it's not doing a lot, so it's not using up a lot of battery power, but it's not very big.
Yeah,
so how much battery can you have in that little thing? Not much, but it still gives you 7 days of battery life. That's pretty impressive. So you charge this up once a week maybe, and then you write for the next week and away you go. Water resistant, as you'd expect, down to 10 atmospheres, which is about 100 metres. So not too bad if you go deep sea diving, if you go swimming, whatever, you're going to be pretty confident. So you can leave it on in the shower, leave it on as you move about and do your daily stuff.
Now, important questions. What about, does it come in rose gold, yellow gold, white gold, or it's just black?
No, they come with 3 colours. Gold, only one version of gold, not sure which version of gold. Gold, black and silver. So you've got 3 colours there. The most important thing
match all my outfits.
That's exactly right. That's what they're thinking of. Not the most important thing, but a very important thing Samsung say is the sizing. So they actually offer you some fake rings to size it, various sizes. You put them on. They recommend you wear that for a day or 2 just to get the feel for it. Yep, that's the right size for me. Now I'll order it in. But still, if you're not happy with it, 30-day money-back guarantee. And when people offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, it says to me that they really want people to give it a go. And once they give it a go, they'll be convinced. Because some people would think, I'm not really sure it'll work for me. Give it a go. If you're not happy, bring it back in a month's time. And I think once people got it and started using it, they'd say, I might as well keep it. There was the one time I saw there was a TV show or a streaming show called Billions. And they were on the share market trading on that. And in one episode there, the boss handed out a bunch of smart rings to his employees. But then all he did was use that to track to see how hard they're working, where they're at, and basically control every minute of their lives. So be aware if your boss starts offering smart rings as a present for your great work, just be aware that he might have watched the episode of Billions where they handed out smart rings. So it's getting there. We're getting more and more with our wearables. I've said it before, we're getting so good at tracking how unhealthy we are now. We're getting more and more passive in our activities, less healthy, but we've got great ways of telling us
Does
just
it count
how unhealthy.
the cheeseburgers that I eat?
That's right. Does it count the calories? That'd be good actually, if it count the calories you ate. That's a good idea.
Else.
Yeah, I like that. So Aussie customers, the first in Southeast Asia and Oceania to have access to this, which either says one of 2 things. Gee, that's great. We're early adopters. We grab onto these new things, or the market's small enough, Samsung can test it out here to see how well it's received by the market. I'm never sure which one of those 2 is what we should be excited or disappointed about when stuff comes to us first.
In work environments where the stress on workers is high and accidents have the potential to cause major harm and expense, the onus falls onto the bosses to look after their workers. Even the ones who want to push themselves harder than what is generally accepted. Well, wearable sensing tech, and we sort of mentioned that in the last story, well, it's becoming a bit more of a feature in these workplaces. And Matt, fatigue can be monitored and even predicted these days.
Yeah, and I really like this idea. It's a bit more than just the ring sensing here. They've got a little suit on your torso, your arms, your legs, just to monitor different parts of your body. And in manufacturing, some of the highest injury rates occur in manufacturing, and some of that's physical, some of that is just mental fatigue as well.
Yeah.
So if there's something that can be done to monitor that, that sounds like a good thing. Now, you can imagine if I'm working in a manufacturing plant and I go to my boss and say, I'm feeling a bit tired, I might just have a 10-minute break. I don't know that I'd get a great response from my boss.
You can have a 10-minute break when you've earned it. Now get back to the coal furnace.
At knock-off time, you can have a break overnight if you like. So this here is a way of saying, let's monitor fatigue on our employees, and then when our scientific technical indicators give us an indication that there is some fatigue in an employee, let's us go and tap them on the shoulder and say, just take a 10-minute break. No matter how hard you want to work, we think that's better for you. One of the things that I found fascinating about this is where they started to notice fatigue the most, or the best indicator of fatigue with all the sensors they had over the body and all the testing, was in the non-dominant arm.
Oh, really?
And that kind of makes sense because your dominant arm is a bit stronger, you're working away, you might be using both arms equally. Your non-dominant arm is probably just that little bit weaker.
Yeah.
So when they noticed your non-dominant arm moving slightly differently or just not acting the way it did an hour ago, that was one of the first signs that they said, here's a way we can have some sort of indication.
Yeah, right.
They did a bunch of tests. They then got a group of people together to say, here's some real-world scenarios, wear this and let's monitor you. And then it always gets a bit tricky now because they then would look at all the data coming in and then they'd say, how do you feel? Give us a score out of 10. So it still came down to how people felt about their fatigue levels as opposed to what was being measured. Can you get enough data that way? Probably, but I'd love it if there was some other way you could measure something where it wasn't just their opinion. They might have had a bad day. Their footy team might have lost last night. They might have had a late night, whatever. So it's probably a way that just, it's still scientific, but it just gives the personal opinion in there. With 43 participants in that study, I'd like to see a lot more.
Yeah, you want to see 1,000 or so,
Yeah,
sure.
to get to the point where you could say, let's get rid of the outliers and now we've got a good data set to work with. But it is good, and I think we're seeing more and more of this where employers know that they're responsible for their employees. WH&S is very important, but also if they're just doing it for the bottom line, if they don't really care about their employees, from a bottom line perspective, it still makes sense to have fewer accidents, to have employees working to their best ability. And if they need a break, that's probably a good thing because you don't want accidents and you don't want them not working as effectively. So it all sounds like a reasonable thing to me. I suppose the big question is the ethical use of this. Do you start to use it to drive your employees harder or as a genuine tool to monitor their fatigue?
Or is it then used as a tool for giving some of the sack?
Well, it might be. We notice you get fatigued after 6 hours. We want 8-hour workers here, so it could be so. It's good if it's used in the right way, but maybe that's not always the case with unethical
Well, I don't know.
employers.
Maybe there's a whole new set of laws that come in with them as well, perhaps, regulations and whatnot. Who knows?
Yep. But a bit more obvious than just giving someone a ring too. You've got to put the whole bodysuit on compared to just have this lovely ring.
AI artwork is becoming well and truly normalised now. And I'll tell you, I've done a couple of Google image searches for things and I swear the origin is quite questionable. Well, perhaps the descriptor normal may be something of an understatement. There is AI now, that's AI art now, that is being revered and it's even fetching a pretty penny at Sotheby's, Matt.
There's 3 days left, James. If you listen to this podcast on the day that it comes out, 3 days left. You've got till the 7th of November. Prices started around about the $120,000 mark.
Awesome. So that lazy $120,000 I've got lying around under the bed.
Well, by the time this is live, it might be higher than that. So you get that lazy 120, then go and raid your wife's
the down
little
payment
box as well that she's got money tucked away in, and then a few of your friends, and you might get there. I don't know how much it's going to go for in the end.
But this is AI art.
This is AI art, and it's terrible. In my professional artistic opinion, I wasn't that impressed. What was impressive was that
you're going to get a phone call from Sotheby's now.
What are you doing talking down this? The artwork was created by Ada, AI-DA, and it's a robotic or humanoid robot, if you like, and it painted this artwork with paintbrushes. So it's all well and good for some of the AI art that we see generated by a computer.
Oh, right.
But this was actually
by paintbrushes.
By paintbrushes, by a humanoid robot. So the image was described. We want a picture of Alan Turing, and I'm not sure if I love this title. I'm not making commentary on it. I'm just giving you the facts here. The title is AI God. Maybe AI creator, AI father, but AI God was the title they came up with because it's of Alan Turing, who is often seen as the father, not sure if it's the God, but the father of modern computing. So that's fair enough. They've got a picture and Alan Turing is there ready to be drawn. So the humanoid robot said, I know what Alan looks like. I'll go and paint Alan. But I reckon most kindergarten classes, maybe I'm going too far, maybe first class, could do a better job of a painting than Ada. The significance is, of course, the first humanoid robot painting, and this humanoid robot has done other paintings as well.
Yeah.
But that's fascinating about that.
Well,
but
you pay for the first one.
You do. You pay for the first one so you can have it there and say...
if it looks like something that needs some real critical analysis...
It'll get better. It's a big painting. It's 1.6 metres by 2.3 metres. So you've got a big size painting. And I'm sure that was done deliberately because the humanoid robot probably didn't have a good enough precise control over the brush to do really fine painting. So they probably did that to say, look at it, it's so big, but I'm sure there was some other logic behind it as well. So I love the idea they've done it with Alan Turing. I love the idea they've got a humanoid robot. I'm just not going to pay that kind of money for something that doesn't look fantastic.
But are you happy for someone else to buy it for you?
Oh, look, I'll take the donation, absolutely, and hang it up in my foyer.
In your foyer or just in the back of your cupboard somewhere?
No, I put it in the foyer. If someone else bought it for me, I'll put it in the foyer. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Talking point.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. In 2024, do kids really have it better? See, in my day, a toy robot came with a key and a clockwork mechanism. You could march it across a table with its head spinning around. The good ones had lights in their eyes that blinked on and off. Toy robots these days, though, not sure. Matt, what can a $599 Buzz Lightyear robot possibly do in 2024 that a clockwork pressed tin robot couldn't do in the 70s?
Well, it can limit your imagination because it does everything for you. And I think
does everything for me.
Probably what you're alluding to, that you created the stories, you created the voices when you were playing with various toys and robots back in...
No, literally, we wound it up, watched it walk across the table, sometimes fall off, and that was about the extent of it.
Okay. I was thinking of other toys that might occur. And I remember, look, I do like the Toy Story franchise, the series there. And in fact, one of the things that I miss when my kids were young, so Toy Story came out, the first one in 1995. So my kids were very young at that stage. And a few years after that, as the kids were watching the various Toy Stories, it gave me a good excuse to watch things like Toy Story.
Yeah.
I probably
a license.
I probably would feel a bit funny walking into a cinema now by myself with a bunch of other younger people and say, I'm just sitting here to watch the Toy Story movie. Someone might come and just say, sir, you can't be with these children in this theatre here. But they were good. And so that was the first fully computer-generated animated film.
Yeah.
Pixar, it put Pixar on the map without a doubt. So it was good and the stories were good. Like, I was impressed. It used to be very enjoyable watching them, and some of those I'd think you'd also find there were some little lines or some little bits there.
Yeah, some clever writing, and it was good to see. Yeah?
That's right. That appealed to the adults. I think in the first Cars, one of the funny little scenes was when people were lined up, or the cars were lined up to go to the toilet, and there's a huge lineup outside the female toilets and no lineup outside the male toilets. Everyone goes, yep, I've seen that before. So there were some little things there that the kids wouldn't necessarily get, but adults would. But I remember buying not a Buzz Lightyear, but a...
Woody?
Woody, thank you.
There we go.
A Woody... toy for one of my kids, and it had the little pull string at the back.
Yeah.
And it said, there's a snake in my boot, and maybe three other things.
Somebody poisoned the water hole.
That's right.
That's it.
They're the ones. So that was pretty cool. I thought, a little pull string, look at that. And that worked a few times till the pull string got pulled out too hard, and that was it. But this Buzz Lightyear toy, this is cool. So $600 you mentioned, you want to get a fair bit for $600. So you've got a robot that's got microservers. You've got 23 of these microservers, and those microservers do things like raise an eyebrow on Buzz's face.
Wow.
That's pretty cool, because he has got some pretty mean eyebrows.
And so much expression comes out of the
so much
eyebrow.
Expression, that's right.
Yeah.
So it does things
clever.
like moves his mouth. It's got things like his walking, so you've got some of the motors to make him walk, so he does walk around a bit, but his arm movements, just like in the movie, and he's looking around trying to find his spaceship, and he's got his hands on his hips kind of thing.
Does it do Mrs. Nesbitt? Because he's got a bit where he's where the little sister dresses him up in a dress and all that sort of stuff.
That's right.
To play with her little dolls and stuff.
Yep. I didn't see that part there. He does do the Spanish mode, the from Toy Story 3, the Spanish mode. So he does that.
Fantastic.
So 75 microchips, 3,000 parts, and as I said, 23 servo motors in this. And it's fantastic. It's a little AI tool. So you're having
a bargain at $599.
That's right. You're having a conversation with this thing. It's not just like you pull the string and you get a random saying that comes out. You're actually having a conversation. You're asking Buzz questions. You're saying, oh no, Buzz, there's some intruders. What can you do? And of course, he pulls out his laser on his arm, which is just a blinking red light, of course. I'm sure they thought about doing a little laser pointer, but they probably thought maybe that will be dangerous for someone. So it's a blinking red light. So he's attacking these alien creatures that are coming with the blinking red light. He does the gasping for air when the lid on his helmet is popped up. It's foreign air.
Fantastic. Yep.
So all these things there. So it's a pretty cool little toy. And I think more than anything, they were really just showing off what we can do now Forget about the little toy that walks across the desk and falls off the end if it gets to the end. What you can do now with interaction using some of the modern technology we've got, quite fascinating. So I looked at it and I went, I wish I had some kids young enough still so I could buy it so I could play with it.
But full marks to them. I mean, they're still making money out of this thing.
Oh, absolutely right. Yeah, so from $9.95, 3 movies, and then I'm sure all of the sales of all the stuff would have well and truly surpassed the ticket sales at movies. So they did very well with it. But yeah, I want to buy it, but I just can't justify buying it for myself. and the kids would find it a bit funny.
You can tell the person behind the counter any story. This is for one of my kids.
Yes, that's right, who are very much young still. Or if I just put it under the Christmas tree at Christmas time and just say Santa Claus brought it, he got confused, thought I had young kids still.
Well, who's going to have that?
I better have a look at it. So keep an eye out for that one.
In a world where it's becoming increasingly easy for your identity to be misused by others, where the chances of other versions of you wander the globe, spending your money, doing things that you would never do, recording felonies in your own name, well, you'd be excused for worrying that the future looks decidedly bleak on that front. Surely there has to be a way that your identity can be protected. A last line of defence against the deep fake, perhaps. Surely, Matt, some good news.
Some good news. This is actually a bit of a pivot. So Sam Altman from OpenAI fame, ChatGPT, he's got a little startup that he got going called WorldCoin. And originally it was a cryptocurrency device, cryptocurrency model that he was generating here. But one of the things that he wanted, that I thought was important, was some sort of biometric testing so that you, James, were definitely going to be identified as the owner of this particular crypto coin or this wallet, if you like. And so they worked on that, and then they realised as they went, the biometric part's probably more important than the crypto part, because lots of people out there trying to do crypto, but maybe someone out there needs to make sure someone who really is someone.
They have something they could market here.
Yeah, so they've pivoted from being a crypto company to being a biometric company.
Oh, wow, okay.
So they've got a little orb, a little eye-scanning orb, and the idea here is that you would have your own orb, or you might go into a bank, or you might go anywhere that you need to prove who you are, government department maybe, and there would be an orb. And that orb would basically scan your eye and go, yep, we know this is James. Now, behind the scenes, a whole bunch of other stuff would occur with all of your data and some sort of way to verify that you are really who you say you are. Better than fingerprint, because fingerprint, you can cut off a finger, as we see in the movies on a regular basis. Yeah. An eye, when you scan an eye, it needs to be living, it needs to be alive still, so you can't just pop out someone's eye and go and scan that eye, so that's a good thing. Eyes are unique, obviously, so that means that you're going to get it, and certainly more reliable than a fingerprint. Ignore the cutting off your finger part of it. It's more reliable than that in terms of how easy it is to identify someone who's unique in that. So the idea now is they're working on trying to get this out there to a bunch of organisations, a bunch of companies, a bunch of government departments, etc., to say, here's how people will prove their identity. Now, the risk of all of that, of course, is that somewhere someone's storing, this eye belongs to James.
Yeah,
get into that database, then you can manipulate it. Now, this eye belongs to James. So that's the concern that I have with one company or even one government department. But I think it'll come back to the point where government departments will store this information. But gee, it's come a long way, hasn't it? From a good old-fashioned, what's your name, what's your date of birth, to now requiring an eye to scan. And you see some of the movies from yesteryear where they go through someone's process where they did evade authorities and they did fake passports and all sorts of things, and it seemed pretty easy in retrospect to go, look at that was pretty easy. You just cut out another photo and stuck it on a passport and away you go. Or just said someone's date of birth. I remember, of course I didn't do it, but my friends might have tried to get into the pub before they were 18, and all you do is get someone else's driver's license, and they were bits of paper back in those days with no photo.
That's right.
And the trick question the security guys knew was, what star sign are you? Because you'd show you, and the guys probably didn't know the star signs either, but it was always, you'd learn the date of birth off the driver's license, obviously the person's name, and you'd make sure you knew the star sign. So when they say, what's your star sign? That's easy, I'm a Virgo or Aquarius or whatever it might be. So it's a little trick. So we've come a long way since then, where it's much harder to go through and prove your identity or to make sure you are really who you say you are. So I'm interested to see where this goes. They've rebranded WorldCoin because it didn't make sense to be marketing a biometric product under WorldCoin. They're now just called World. which sounds a bit egotistical, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? When you name your, yeah.
Here's my little startup called World.
Called the best thing in the world.
That's right. But I think what this says to me is that we're going to see a lot more of biometric processes to prove our identity than we have in the past. I mean, even now when you go into mobile phone shops and you just want to do something simple, there'll be some sort of two-factor authentication because people are stealing people's identity. So there's different things happening there, but that's still relying on you having a device, a phone. I steal your device, I can still get that text message to you and go, yep, here's my code that I just stole off a guy yesterday. Yeah. So that's not perfect, but an eye scan, that starts to get to the stage where it's pretty effective.
Pretty serious. Yeah. But I've also seen it in, sci-fi movies where someone steps up to a door and it scans their eye or whatever. We're there. Yeah. Hollywood's given us another idea and we've taken it and run with it.
It seems like it's much easier in the movies, though. They just go, let's do it, and it's done. Yeah. And then someone says, what? We're going to have to do that? That's even just getting enough of these orbs distributed around the world. If orb was the dominant player, getting enough security devices around the world where it's in homes, it's in every shop. It's you walk into a shop and use a credit card, you scan your eye to make sure it's legitimately you. So,
well, we'll see how that goes. Every great empire eventually takes a fall. The Persians, the Greeks, the Egyptians and the Romans, they all had their time in the sun. Well, that was the age of conquest, of course. In the age of colonisation, the Brits, the Dutch, the Spanish, the Portuguese, they all had their shot at world domination. If there's got to be one constant throughout history, though, it's that pride comes before the fall. Which brings us to our crunch question today. With AI ready to do some heavy lifting across the internet, and it's actually already doing that heavy lifting, the question is the Google empire about to find itself kicked to the curb and a quirky item of nostalgia only, Matt?
I'm sure Google will be very impressed that you're comparing Google to some of the empires.
In terms of world dominance.
Yeah, well, you're right. And there's no doubt about it.
It's been a long time since anyone Yahoo'd anything.
It has been. And they've got 93% market share, so you've got to get pretty close to, say, world dominance with that sort of market share. Yeah. So the big question here is, are we going to see Google as the dominant search engine in, say, 5 years' time? And the obvious answer is, of course we will. They're so dominant at the moment. How are they going to get away from that? And I think one of the things that you can get complacent about is that you think you're on top of the world, but the world changes beneath you. And I've got to say, I'm impressed by the fact that you've started a company. So here you are, little old Google, Sergey sitting there. Let's get this company going. And you get to the stage where not only does it become a dominant player, but it's not only a noun, but it's now a verb.
Verb as well.
You don't search for things, you Google things. You don't look at a search engine, you look at a Google search. So you're using it as a verb, as a noun. That's pretty impressive. And you do get to the stage where some companies have taken over the space. So I think of things like Band-Aid, Vegemite, Esky, Xerox, Photoshop. Yeah. When's the last time you put some yeast extract on your toast? You put some Vegemite on your toast. Yeah. So all of those companies, and even Xerox, I don't think so much in Australia, but in America, I think people didn't photocopy stuff. They Xeroxed it. So it became a verb as well as a noun. So some of those companies have done pretty well, but again, not all of those are dominant players anymore. I mean, some of those still are at the moment, but we don't Xerox a lot of stuff anymore, do we? But when you look at search engines, there were some players initially, and actually there's a funny little story. One of the first search engines was called Archie, and it was based on I'm going to archive stuff, and archive sound a bit clumsy. I'll call it Archie. The next two search engines that came out that were quite dominant were Veronica and Jughead. And so that was after the Archie comics.
Yeah.
And it made no sense to call a search engine Veronica except, the other guy called his Archie. Well, I'll go along that same theme with the Archie comics. Obviously, they were nerdy comic readers, I'm assuming. But
Who would have thought that people in charge of designing computer software would be nerds?
Comic nerds at that.
Comic nerds, yeah.
That's right. So we had search engines like Archie, Webcrawler, Yahoo, you mentioned, Alta Vista. I had a funny story about Alta Vista. I was doing some computer training decades ago, and I said, I was showing the class how to search, and I was going to use Alta Vista because that was my preferred search engine at the time.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I didn't know it at the time, but there's a porn site at the time that's Alta-Vista. And I made a mistake when I was typing it in. I was typing in Alta Vista, and I'm looking at the class with the projector behind me, and I'm just typing in saying, here's my favourite place I like to go to, alta-vista.com, and people start looking up there, and they looked a bit confused, and I thought, it's a search engine. Surely I've seen that before. And as I turned around, I saw things I didn't want to see. And
on dial-up, that would have been really slow to come up as well, wouldn't it? It would have been a slow reveal, a tantalising reveal.
Well, quite possibly. But I had to backtrack quickly. It's not my favourite site. That's my second favourite site. I go to my favourite one now, Alta Vista without the hyphen in there. So they were making the web a bit more accessible. Of course, Google came along, had a better algorithm, and then everyone started using Google, a dominant player without a doubt. But there's a couple of problems they've got at the moment. One is that pesky little US Department of Justice. And Microsoft had the same problem back in the 90s where they found themselves in a dominant position. So the Department of Justice said that we think you're violating our antitrust rules, so we're going to make you break up the company. Now, in the end, Microsoft appealed against that, and they won that appeal, so they didn't have to break it up. They certainly had to make changes about the bundling of Internet Explorer with Windows. So that played out, but they're at the stage now. They're saying that Google, this is the Department of Justice saying Google is using their market power to basically make sure there's no other competition. And the Department of Justice doesn't like that. They like to drop antitrust trials on various companies. Will they make them break themselves up? Will they separate their search from their advertising, for example? Will they stop allowing them to basically be the default search on various phones and various computer products that come out?
So you're saying that you say Google's had 93% of the market share, so is the other 7% just that obstinate group of US Department of Justice officials?
We're going to show them
yes.
that someone
you don't
else
have 100%. Anyway, sorry.
That's right.
I digress.
So that would be interesting to break all of those different parts up. So YouTube, I mean, I love the fact that YouTube's there. There's something like 500 hours of videos uploaded every hour to YouTube. That's got to be stored somewhere. I'm happy for someone to let me store that somewhere for free, but they've got to make some money somewhere. There's a fair bit of storage capacity they need for all of that, obviously. So if you made them break it all up, that'd be interesting if the US Department of Justice does that. So that's a threat to them. Part of the problem would be, and this is where it's confusing, if I'm in business, I want to be the number one market player. I've reached 93%. I'm pretty happy with how I'm going. And then it's like, okay, now you've got too much. Now you're just being greedy. Cut it back to 60%. We're okay with that. 93%, not so much. So it's almost like Google wants to encourage other players in the market to be a bit better or be not quite as good themselves, and then the US Department of Justice might leave them alone. But they have done some things that probably have been abusing their market position, which is where the Department of Justice is interested. Yeah. That's the first problem they've got. That's a legal problem. They'll throw, obviously, lots of money and solicitors, all the rest of it at it. But I think they've got a bigger problem, and the bigger problem is AI. Because now, doing a Google search, it's so clumsy. Yeah. You mean I've got to type in a search, and then I've got to wait for a few pages to come up, and I've got to select one of those. That's right. And sure, it might be the first one, but the second one looks okay as well. And then you want me to read that information on that page to find out the information I'm after. Gee, that sounds clunky. Can't you do it for me? Can't you just go and find? Actually, there was an engine there at one stage called Ask Jeeves.
Yes, I remember that.
Way ahead of its time, because I kind of feel like that. Can't I just ask Jeeves to go and do the work for me? Well, it turns out you can now, as long as you're happy with inaccurate results from time to time.
And problems not being completely solved
for
you.
Not yet, but that's where we're at with AI tools. So you go to a ChatGPT, you don't have to go and search on a page and find what year did this particular thing happen. You just go and ask ChatGPT. It's got access to, everything, and it looks at all that and then says, here's the date that this particular thing happened. Let's go and search the first Toy Story movie. Okay, 22nd of November 1995 was when the first Toy Story movie came out. Oh, great. I didn't have to go and search different pages to find that information. The cross-referencing, the accuracy, their issues. But this is early days. We haven't been talking about ChatGPT for more than, maybe a year or so. And so very early days. So I think that's the problem. Now, ChatGPT, it's going well. It's got probably 60% market share. Google, of course, says, well, we'll do something as well. They tried Bard and it went okay-ish, but not great. It might have 10% market share. So you've got Gemini, you've got some other players in there, and Google will try and compete in that. But there's a new kid on the block, and the new kid on the block understands his stuff better than Google. So this may well be the Kodak moment, the Nokia moment for Google, where they think they're in the search engine market, but they should be in the serving up information easily market.
Yeah.
And so it's a different market.
Well, I wonder what we'll end up calling it in 10 years' time. Will it still be called, will we call it Googling?
Well, imagine if, let's say, ChatGPT, which doesn't roll off the tongue quite as nicely, does it, as Google, but whatever comes along, will we still Google stuff when we're doing AI to get it
how
back?
many people have got a cooler that they throw their drinks in when they go on a picnic and just chuck it in the esky?
That's right, and it's not an esky brand. I know when I do some of my radio interviews, there's one particular radio announcer I have a laugh with from time to time. When we're about to start recording, he says, okay, I've got the tape rolling. So we still talk about the tape rolling. And I pulled him up on it one day and I said, so have you still got a couple of tapes and a tape deck? And he kind of had a bit of a laugh. Of course not. I've got an SD card that's all being recorded to, but we still say tape rolling. So will we still say Google? And it'll be funny. Go forward 20 years and the kids will say, what do you mean when you say just go and Google that? I'm searching for that using ChatGPT or whatever the tool is at the time. Where's this Google term come from? Well, Sonny, sit down
Back in my day.
That's right.
Yeah.
We had their search engine called Google. So it is quite fascinating. What will it look like in 5 years' time? I am quite confident, put my Nostradamus hat on here, I'm quite confident that Google won't have 93% market share in 5 years' time. Will they still be around? Yeah, I think so. But I don't think they'll be the dominant player. We can still say that Nokia is still around, but they're not really in the form they were in anywhere near. So they'll still be a player in there, but I just think there's going to be someone else coming along with a whole new set of eyes, and they're saying, you know what, there's a new game now, and this is that new game.
Worm is turning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Joby Aviation is a name that's come up once or twice on this podcast already. It seems that they're very keen to lead the way in the future of commercial flight, and they really like the possibilities around air taxis. Now, if you live in one or two of the lucky cities, well, you may not have to worry about peak hour traffic anymore from as soon as 2025. Fasten your seatbelts, Matt. We're going over the top.
So I'm fascinated, James. I've got a little device sitting on my desk here, and it's got the brand Joby on it.
Ah.
And I don't know if it's the same company. So I don't know if Joby, the aviation company, and Joby, the little device that you stick camera stuff on top of, is the same. I'm assuming they're not. I'm assuming we're talking about Joby Aviation, but it's a pretty unusual name, isn't it? I don't really know where the term Joby comes from, but it's quite fascinating. So back to this. Sorry, I just as you're saying that, I'm thinking I've got a Joby device sitting on my desk. It's not.
The name's right there.
It's not a VTOL. It's not a vertical takeoff and landing device on my desk. Although that would be cool, but it's not. So I don't know where that comes from. So they do things. The Joby sitting on my desk does the Gorilla Pod stuff. So the sort of device that hold cameras.
Yeah.
So Joby Aviation is going quite well. They might use Gorilla Pods in their aircraft. I'm not sure, but they go quite well with their eVTOL, their electric vertical takeoff and landing devices. They're at the stage now where they're almost all the way through 3 of the 5 steps they've gotten through for FAA certification. And so they are confident they'll start doing commercial flights in the US by next year, sometime next year. Not sure when.
Wow.
That's pretty scary.
If they take off at, pardon the pun, but if they get going, I can't imagine it'll be very long before they pop up everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. Now, we've got some in China. There's a Chinese manufacturer, Ehang. They are approved for commercial flights in China. Not sure how many are flying around there. I know in Dubai, there's some already flying over there as well. Joby's keen to get into Dubai as well. But this thing is happening without a doubt. Now, the Joby aircraft in particular, they're focused on a speed. They've got a speed they can do of about 320 kilometres an hour. And even though that's good, I don't think it's necessarily the most exciting thing, because the whole point to me is where they're focused on this is taking you from, say, the airport into the city. So you get off the airport, and many airports are out of the city because they've got to have a big runway. So you land and you get in a taxi or you get in a train and you're half an hour.
You deal with the traffic.
That's right. And it's crowded and all the rest of it. And half an hour later, you pop up in the city. So imagine getting on something that can do 320 kilometres an hour, but more importantly, in a straight line and not stop at traffic lights on a regular basis. You're going to get there in 5 minutes.
Mascot to CBD, yeah.
Yeah,
5
fantastic.
minutes, easy.
So they've got a range of about 160 kilometres, so that's not that big a deal. They're not designed to do Sydney to Melbourne type flights. They're designed to do these short hops. They say their target is around about 40 kilometres. Their range, if you like, is about 40 kilometres of where they've got a range of 160, but they see that as their market. Little 40-kilometre trip, so airport into the city, that type of thing. I think will be where they'll really be used. 4 passengers is what they're talking about initially, with a pilot, only a single pilot, not dual pilots. A bunch of redundancy built in. They've got multiple batteries, multiple propellers, obviously. They've got multiple wiring, redundant wiring. So a whole range of things built in there so that if something does go wrong, which it can do when you're up in the air, you'd prefer it,
it's a
to have
machine.
some redundancy. That's right. It can go wrong.
But I'm wondering, okay, so obviously the airport makes sense that you can take off from the airport reasonably comfortably, but where could you land in the city? I mean, there's going to be limitations with that for sure.
Well, you think so, and logically you'd probably have various buildings with helipads on them. If you land with a helipad, you can land with this.
There could be a pontoon on Darling Harbour maybe. Who knows?
Like that. Yeah, so it'll be a whole new thing.
There might be some limitations, but it's only for the start, and then as things improve, you'll have more and more places where you can go.
Well, things have changed so much, just in terms of buildings and what, if I'm an architect today, what I'm planning in my building compared to what I was planning 50 years ago is different. Maybe as we go forward, every building will have its little pad, because I don't need a garage at my house anymore. I need a little pad to land my eVTOL aircraft on, or someone comes and picks me up from there, from my home, and takes me away. Again, at this stage, we're talking about a commercial location to a commercial location, building to building, airport to building, that type of thing. But it's a pretty exciting area. Now, they're focused on quiet. NASA tests have found that Joby's aircraft are about 100 times quieter than traditional aircraft. So that's traditional helicopters, not just aircraft, helicopters, because that's the market they're competing in, really, isn't it? Helicopters.
That's right.
So that's pretty good from that perspective. They're made from lightweight carbon fibre, so that's obviously a good thing. So overall, I just think this is a huge area of growth, and the estimation is by 2029, the air taxi industry will be worth $6.2 billion, which is not that big a number, really, when you talk about the globe. But at the moment, it's probably worth next to zero. So,
that's right. That's reasonable growth still, isn't it?
So when you say in 5 years' time it's going to be worth that amount of money, then that doesn't sound too bad. So fascinating area. There's more work being done in places like Paris and Singapore to see whether they can have some air taxi services. It will be a common thing. I'm keen to go somewhere where I can get in one of these and actually go for a flight.
They need to come out to regional New South Wales.
Now we're talking.
Okay, clean freaks. We have the latest from Dyson for cleaning hard floors. It's a vacuum mop. A vacuum and mop system. It's all in one. And it'll clean your floors faster, so you'll have more time for cleaning the oven or wiping out the toaster tray or polishing the runnels on the window slides. Matt, pull me up here before I get out of control.
No, you're going well. Keep going. Dyson actually described this concept of having a more enjoyable way to clean the floors. I think they've gone too far, James. I'm not sure that anything you give me...
That'd have to be so enjoyable for me to want to really do it.
So I think that's maybe the marketing department got onto that one there and said, we're going to make this enjoyable. Well, probably not, but probably better. I can remember when I used to mop the floor, when my mum would give it to me to mop the floor at home when I was young, and I used to have what I thought was quite a logical argument, James. My mum didn't buy it, but I'd say, Mum, it doesn't make sense to me because, look, the water's dirty, and so I'm putting the mop in the dirty water, and I have one of those things where you stand on one side and push the thing down with the rollers and pull it up through that.
Yep.
And I'm just taking the water that's dirty, Mum, and then spreading around that dirt on the floor, so there's no point. I think Mum's answer was, we'll go and empty the bucket and put clean water in there, which it didn't really help me that much. I went, that didn't go so well. So this concept here is a vacuum mop. Of course it is. Why didn't we have vacuum mops when I was a kid? So the idea here is that as you mop, it's vacuuming up the water. It's got 2 separate containers, one for the clean water and one for the dirty water. So it brings the water up from the ground, it takes that through, cleans that, and then takes over the other container where you can see there's clear containers. Gee, that water's dirty there. That water's clean there because it's cleaned it. Fantastic. So you do that. It's got water jets, so that might be appealing. 2 dozen pulse water jets to help clean the floor. So now I'm a bit excited.
Well,
jets.
I can't pretend I'm not excited. This is fantastic.
That's right. So the water jets, I still want a robot to go and clean the floor. I want Rose, the robot, to go and clean the floor for me. But the water jets got me somewhat interested. And so the idea here is you can have this on dry ground, you can have it on wet ground, you can mop hard floors, tiles, concrete, not carpet at this stage. Got battery life of about 35 minutes. It's got, of course, a screen on there to be able to allow you to see what's happening. Does something need to be cleaned? Does something need to be emptied out? You've got a screen on there. It's a modern version of a mop. Why didn't we have this a long time ago? I think huge need for a modern vacuum mop, and now we've got one. Probably a bit dearer. I can't imagine you'd pay more than $10 or $15 for a mop in the supermarket these days.
Right.
This one's $1,000. So it would want to be more enjoyable because I could spend $1,000 in a lot of ways.
It's a Christmas present.
It is for someone that's got everything.
Now, being a good scientist, it takes a lot of discipline, but far more importantly, it takes a highly fertile imagination, to paraphrase Einstein's very own words. So, considering all that AI can currently do for us, we know that it currently just follows instructions that we supply, and it generally does that very well. But does it have the capacity to generate brand new thoughts? Does AI have enough imagination yet to generate its own discoveries, Matt?
It's actually interesting that you say that and I know it's an Einstein quote, but the idea of imagination in science, it somewhat seems counterintuitive because you're science, you're dealing with information, you're dealing with data, you're analysing that data.
Yeah, but I believe that the quote was actually something about knowledge is nothing without imagination.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. In fact, I know when my son was looking around for what university course to do, he got attracted by one particular lecturer who they're all pitching their different courses, and when he was walking around the uni, one of them was pitching their course to say, have I got any creative nerds, I think was the term he used. And my son went, oh, I'm a bit creative and I'm a bit nerdy. Oh, this might appeal to me. And so he ended up going there, convinced to go and do that course. And he did a course that was a computer science / media arts course. And it was very much sometimes focused on the creative, sometimes focused on the hard ones and zeros of computer science. So I think for good science, you do need to be creative. And we've kind of worked out before that AI is not that creative. AI can take all this information, analyse that information and give you an answer pretty quickly based on that information, whether it be correct or not.
Well, it's useless if you can't have the imagination to think of something good to do with it.
So here was the test. There was a simulator built called Discovery World. And the whole idea of this was to test AI's capabilities in that scientific discovery. They came up with 8 research themes: archaeology, chemistry, physics, etc. And then they gave 3 difficulty levels: easy, normal, and challenge. Don't know why it wasn't hard, but it was a challenge. And then they said, let's have a look and we'll create 3 different models. They were based on ChatGPT, but they created one model named React, another named Plan and Exec, and the other one Hypothesizer. And they went through. React generated thoughts step by step. Plan and Exec built an overall plan before acting. And Hypothesizer had a hypothesis and then went and got measurements to test that hypothesis, measurements of things that were already out there. And then basically, let's go through and see how you perform, how you compare against some real scientists, people that have got PhDs or master's degrees. Let's see how you go with this problem that we've set. Let you go and test out your skills, Mr. AI, and then these real scientists go and test it out. I'm pleased to say that the humans won out again.
Hooray!
For the moment.
Yeah, okay.
So when they gave all these problems to the real human scientists, they basically solved 66% of the tasks, right? When they gave those same problems to AI, they solved 20% of the tasks. So great victory for humans at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. Go the good guys.
But at the moment, and that's the thing. So can AI learn from this? Definitely. Are we going to get to the stage ever where AI can do more than just take information and generate it back to us? Can it get to the stage where it can be creative? And we mentioned Alan Turing earlier on in the episode. And, of course, the Turing test was a famous test that Turing created that was going to test out whether a computer could simulate a human. And is that then thinking like a human? Now, you can give answers that make you look like a human, but how do you test whether you actually imagining stuff, creating stuff? That's the real challenge.
That's the challenge, yeah.
Can we get to the stage where some sort of AI tool can really lay claim to saying, I created that, or it's just I took a bunch of other stuff and put it together and here's the outcome of that. And that's what they'll try and do in this.
Well,
so
when AI says to us, when you put in a search and the AI says, sorry, I'm really not going to do that search because I just don't need you anymore, Matt.
That's the day that we go, oh, no, turn the computer off.
I don't want to do this and I don't need you, Matt.
That's right. So this is a really interesting test they're doing here now. Is AI learning from this? Yeah, maybe. But it's just fascinating to see how it can compare to real scientists in that real scientific discovery. And there's some areas where AI does excel. If you give, for example, an area where you want protein interactions and it's based on known processes, formulas, I want to say, where we know that these particular proteins interact in this way and this is what happens, yeah, great. AI is better than a human at that sort of stuff because there's some pretty complicated calculations. But when you start to say, okay, think of things, create things, imagine things, that's when AI still struggles at the moment. I don't know how you program that. So, in other words, if you're writing the programs for that, it's one thing.
It's going to be an accident one day.
Maybe.
Where you go to get a solution and it says, sorry, Matt, I'm not doing that for you. I don't need you anymore.
Or when it says, I understand what you're asking, but have you thought about this idea? That's when you go, I haven't, but did you think about that? Yes. Oh, no. So it's quite fascinating to see where that will end up. At the moment, we're still winning the game. But it's a very early game for AI.
And AI is getting smarter by the minute.
How long have we been around? 60,000 years or so, humans on the planet. And we're competing against something that's been around for 5 years maybe. So, no, we're in trouble.
Good luck to us all. And with that, thank you, linesmen. Thank you, ball boys. It's time for us to roll up the nets, pull out the flags, pack up the gear. This show is DONE, done. Thanks for another crackingly tops Tech Talk, Mac.
Toy Story 3 I'm going to go and watch. I didn't get into Toy Story 3 as much as Toy Story 1 and 2 because my kids are a bit older, but I think it's time for me to go sit down.
Toy Story 4 was fantastic as well. They're all great.
And so when no one's in the house, I think I'm just going to stream one of those and just have a bit of a look and just hope no one looks at the windows.
I remember watching the first one and just thinking, how the hell did this come to be? Because I didn't get CGI. I didn't know what it was about. Wasn't expecting to see. It looks like it's a cartoon, but it looks like it's real-life animation as well. As real-life movement, Yeah,
and the humans in there were still pretty impressive. It's one thing to have an animation of a toy because it's a toy, but when you start getting humans that look pretty impressive, you went, wow, So I'm going to sneak away and do that, James. Don't tell anyone, please. Don't tell anyone.
Too late. I think you've let the cat out of the bag already. Well, I'm loving the idea of these flying taxis, so I hope the reality comes somewhere close to where the imagination is leading us, with these things scooting about the place at the level above the traffic. So much potential there, folks. Thanks for tuning in again. Tech Talk is brought to you on a freshly polished silver platter, tied up in a velvet bow and carried on the backs of very willing, carefully trained and immaculately groomed small mammals. All for your listening pleasure. I'm your host, James Eddy, wishing you mirth and prosperity all the way to about this time next week, and when we'll hopefully catch you again for another serving. Until then, take care, keep left, give way, wear a seatbelt and don't talk to strangers, and we'll see you when we see you.